Okay, well, welcome everybody. Um, my name is Jim Waite, and I am proud to serve as the Director of Alumni Relations here at the Kogod School of Business at American University. And it is my sincere pleasure to kick off today's webinar focused on the airline industry. We are extremely excited to have with us today two Kogod alumni, both with senior level positions within the industry. Christine Vels, who serves as the Managing Director, Latin America, Caribbean, and Florida Sales for American Airlines, and Steve Meyer, who serves as the Vice President of Global Sales for the Americas at Japan Airlines. Joining Christine and Steve is Dean John Delaney, who will be serving as the moderator for this webinar. Before I introduce John Delaney, I want to just go over a few of the ground rules or the rules here. So basically, this webinar will go, a conversation will happen between John and Christine and Steve for about 45 minutes. Should you have any questions, please feel free to add the questions into the Q&A box below. In approximately 45 minutes, I will come back on camera and we'll be going through those questions with our guests. This is being recorded, and we will be using this in future classroom discussions and promoting it on our website. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dean John Delaney. Dean Delaney has been with Kogod School of Business since 2016 as our dean. He is a renowned expert in the area of negotiations and is passionate about experiential-based learning for our students, and that is something that our school is well known for. Prior to coming to the Kogod School, John served as the Dean of the Business School for 8 years, I believe, at the University of, 9 years at the University of Pittsburgh, the Joseph M. Katz Graduate School of Business, and the College of Business Administration. Without any further ado, John, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Jim. Welcome everyone who's on the call. And I am really delighted that Christine and Steve joined us today because, hey, I want to know when we're going to be able to get on a plane and go someplace again, at least internationally, if not domestically. Because we have two guests today, we're going to take a slightly different approach from normal. I'm going to ask some general questions about them, and then we'll get right into the airline industry subject. But I'd like to start just by asking first Christine and then Steve, if you could tell the audience a little bit about your backgrounds, where you're from, what led you to American University, and what led you then towards the airline industry. So Christine and then Steve right after.
Thank you, Dean Delaney. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here with you, Jim, and Steve. So I am the daughter of Cuban immigrants who came to this country in 1962. Like many Cuban Americans, I was born in Miami, but grew up in Puerto Rico. And got to American University as a student athlete. I played basketball all 4 years in college, go Eagles. Really, truly enjoyed my time at American University. And from American, I ended up landing an internship with American Airlines, right when American Airlines had just purchased the Latin America routes from Eastern Airlines. So perfect scenario for me because I'm bilingual. Now trilingual, ended up moving to back to Miami, and I have spent the last 31 years working for American Airlines in Miami.
Thanks, Christine. So Steve, how are you going to top that?
I was just going to say, that's so much more interesting. I feel like a little bit, insecure about my background. That's impressive, Christine.
Thank you,
As a
Steve.
student athlete, yeah. So my background, I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I went to Penn State University. So that's rather predictable. And then I thought that I would move to Washington, D.C. And I really hoped to have a career in foreign service. And I thought, I'm going to take that exam. I'm going to do well. I'm going to be in the diplomatic corps. But academically speaking, that wasn't my strong suit. It wasn't really suited for me, right? So I decided to go kind of the commercial route and into the business route. So that's when I looked at my competition, if you will, and realized that in the DC metro area, at that time back in the 90s, the percentage of people that held bachelor's degrees were it's like 95% or something. So I said, I need to do something more to be competitive. And that's what led me to the American University and to go into business. And then eventually I found sales because it just seemed like it led to be the best opportunity that I could socialize with people and really talk about issues. And internationally, that just really piqued my interest. I had moved abroad and lived in overseas in Thailand for a short time after graduating from the American University. And that just piqued my interest in international travel. So I ended up going to work for the airlines, and now I'm at Japan Airlines, and really look back fondly at my time at the American University. I had quite a few professors that I enjoyed. One who taught me about comparative management systems, and it was, I didn't realize how important that would be, because I remember specifically talking about how the structure of Japanese management companies is set up. And who would know that, X number of years later, I would come to use that, and it would be to my benefit working for Japan Airlines. So it's really been a nice loop back from the course to practical life working for Japan Airlines.
This is great, and I want to offer a little bubble comment to all the students who are on the call as we go forward. We have two great alumni who are doing sales jobs, and they love it. And it's not like knocking on doors. So recognize that there's a lot of opportunity if you want to go in that direction. I would like to ask each of you to tell us about the positions you have. I'll ask Steve to go first this time at Japan Airlines, and then come back to Christine at American. What is it that you do on a day-to-day basis? What is it you really like about the job? How does it make you excited every day?
Yeah, Dean Delaney, thank you. And I just want to make one comment. You mentioned about the sales job. I want to talk about when I was in undergrad at Penn State University. I had a professor who I really respected and looked up to. And he said to me, Steve, have you considered a career in sales? And I was insulted. I thought, what? I am studying serious matters here, right? So I say that to say that, yes, there is a career in sales, and it is not like a used car salesman, right? It's really quite an enjoyable profession. But in terms of what I do in my day-to-day role is I lead a team of approximately 30 people across the Americas, and we work together actually very closely with American Airlines because we're in a joint business together. And what that means is that we share revenue and sales from North America to Asia. So we work very closely with American Airlines, and we work with corporate customers and travel agencies. And basically the travel agencies, we try to motivate them to sell more of Japan Airlines and American Airlines to Asia. And we try to work with the corporations to get their flyers to fly with us. And so there's a lot of things to watch in that in terms of looking at different trends, because this industry is ever changing with technology and other things, where I think we'll talk about that later. And then also just to see what type of obstacles that our salespeople have and how can we overcome that so that hopefully we can beat our competition. So that's a little bit of what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Thanks, Steve. Christine.
Thank you. Similar to Steve, and first let me start by saying there was a wonderful, very smart, ahead of her time woman called Mary Kay Ash, who once said, nothing happens until someone sells something, right? So, the world revolves around commerce and selling. So somebody's got to do that job, right? And like Steve, I really enjoy my time in sales. I love sales. It's the right structure for me. We do the same thing. So I'm on the commercial organization. We also are responsible for the airline passenger sales revenue, for travel agencies, what we call TMCs and corporate relationships. in my geographical area, like you mentioned, I handle Latin America, Caribbean, and the state of Florida. But, more importantly, we have 43 countries that are in my region. It's 90 cities, but we're also involved in the economic development of these countries. We don't think ourselves as just an airline that transports people from point A to point B. We work with the countries to develop commerce between the regions, because once we develop it, then people are going to automatically start flying, right? Then you work on getting them to fly on you. But really, we work closely with the countries, whether it's, ministers of tourism or whether it's the Chamber of Commerce's or economic development minister.
Thanks, Christine. I want to jump right into some of the topics that are in the news and probably on everyone's mind. The first one has to do with some of the disruptions that have been caused by passengers lately during the pandemic. And I wonder if you could talk, not as much about the disruptions themselves, but about how that's affecting employees, because many people who are novice travelers probably see your flight attendants as really like servers in the sky, when the reality is they are highly trained and they're there for everyone's safety. Having disruptions on board is not good for safety. It gets a lot of attention. And I think one thing people are wondering is, if I get on a plane, am I going to see something crazy, or is that relatively unusual? I'll ask Christine first and then Steve.
Thank you, Dean. It has been challenging for our frontline team members, but they have been doing an incredible job in managing the situation, from our flight attendants to our pilots to our agents at the airport. One of the challenges that we have is, during the pandemic, the majority of the people that were flying were people that don't normally fly. There are people that fly once a year. They're not even a frequent flyers in terms of they don't have even an advantage number. And people have really dealt with, working through whatever psyches and issues they have from the pandemic. So we've seen an uptake on the cases, from people being drunk to people not wearing their masks on board the flight, which is an FAA regulation. And it has been difficult on our team. We've been working in terms of policies to help our team members to ensure, number one, that they are safe, and number two, that the rest of the passengers are safe. And there's been changes on policies. If we have to, unfortunately, ground an airplane or divert an airplane because we're having a situation on board an aircraft, we have to do that at this point.
And Steve.
Yeah, so thank you, Dean Delaney. I think that as Christine said, I don't think that this is really a frequent type of problem, but especially when it comes to international, because the number of passengers that we have right now are so few, unfortunately, that it's really not been a major problem. But our crew and everyone is very well trained and very well aligned, and I think that we have a heightened awareness right now that this is a concern. So as always, but especially right now during this pandemic period, one of the things that we've been doing at Japan Airlines from the very beginning is reviewing all types of training, including safety type of things. So with the additional time that we've had on our hands, because there've been fewer passengers, we've really been putting that into practice. So fortunately, we've not had any major issues, and I don't think it's something that individual passengers really need to be quite worried about, right? But and I trust the professionals on board that everyone will always take care of things. So yeah.
And if I can, I just add one more thing to Steve, and thank you for pointing that out. The majority of the challenges that we've had have been domestic travelers. International, although we are flying on the Latin America region, we've been flying all along pretty much. we haven't seen those situations on the international side. We have seen them in the domestic side.
Yeah, thanks. It's heartening to hear that because it's one thing that's clear about this is that when these incidents occur, someone's going to film it. So they'll be on social media. And what you're saying is that it may not be quite as prevalent as is suggested just by the media that's out there. Now, I'm going to switch gears a little bit because one of the big challenges airlines had when the pandemic started and things shut down is you went really from 30,000 feet to the ground in, a few days' time effectively. And it had a tremendous negative effect on the whole industry revenue structure. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how things have changed right now, whether they're getting more stable. And in particular, Christine, your hub in Miami is probably a little bit different from the Los Angeles hub that Steve has. Maybe you can talk a bit about some of the issues that you've seen in the hubs that are radiating out to the routes and to passengers and everyone in the crew and the world.
Sure, Dean. So the airline business is incredibly complex, and particularly the routing of an airplane and the scheduling of crew, right? And normally on a normal day, if there is a weather delay for 3 or 4 hours here and an airport is shut, it may take 2 days to get the aircraft and crew back to its normal schedule. So here you go in the pandemic, and we went down to flying 33% of our schedule for a long period of time. It's difficult to ramp up the schedule of the aircraft, of the crew, because the crew gets set up at least a month in advance, right? And not knowing if countries are going to be open or not. Usually we'll have some countries that will say today, effective Friday, you can no longer fly, or effective Friday, we're canceling 50% of the schedule. That dynamic has been incredibly challenging. Now, when you look at the way the airlines fly, we have the system that's called the hub and spoke, right? And we have our hubs like Miami. Miami is unique because we fly to 50 international destinations out of Miami. Whereas a hub, LA has international flying as well, right? But more domestic. And of course, Asia being closed, I think that maybe LA did not receive the challenges that we had during the pandemic. We went from, you think of how we check in customers, our average checking time in Miami, because it's an international hub, it's about 3 minutes per customer. And now you're flying, you have all these people coming in and going to 50 different countries that have 50 different requirements for COVID. Some require vaccine, some it's a PCR test 3 days out, some is an antigen test. Another will be a PCR test 5 days out, specific test, right? And our agents at the airport had to go through checking in customers to deciphering people's vaccine cards or test and understanding if these people can board the flight. That brought our checking time from 3 minutes to 12 minutes per passenger and caused an enormous amount of delays. People were missing their connections. People were waiting in line for 3 hours. But of course, with every challenge, there's an opportunity. We invested in technology. We have now an app called Verifly that we are using. Japan Airlines is also using it, that helps customer upload their information and verify ahead of time if they actually have the correct test or documentation before they get to the airport. And that really has helped the check-in process. There's nothing worse than you going to travel and get to the airport and we can't board you because you did the wrong test or you missed it by a day. Right? So that has been a new challenge that we have had to live with. Again, between Verifly, we also have a website called with a company called Dayon that's called Sherpa, that you put in your information of where you're flying to, and it'll give you exactly what the requirements are. So that way, when you get to the airport, you can fly in. It's the airline's responsibility to ensure that all passengers boarding the aircraft have the proper documentation. And if we miss somebody and we send somebody that doesn't have the proper test, we get fined. Plus the fact that we have to fly them back, right? So not the best customer experience. So that has been pretty challenging to cope with throughout this pandemic.
Yeah, and Steve, I know it's a little bit different because as Christine said, most of the Asian flights have been dramatically reduced or the countries are closed. But could you add to that in terms of the experience, given LA is a different type of hub than Miami?
Yeah, sure. And I think from Japan Airlines perspective, we consider our flights from the Americas to be our gateways to Asia, right? So our hub, so Los Angeles would be one of those gateways, and it's an important one for us. We fly both to Tokyo Narita, Tokyo Haneda, and also to Osaka. So it is a major one for Japan Airlines, but our hubs are really in Tokyo for moving beyond to other points in Asia and then domestically to Japan. But because of the quarantine restrictions that have been put on people flying into Japan, they've not been able to fly beyond. So there hasn't really been that type of connection to be concerned about. But I think that the challenges that we face are similar to what Christine mentioned with the check-in process. So she had mentioned previously about the time it takes to check in. So I had checked with our airport staff and I said, hey, how long does this really take? And they said, normally it's 3 to 5 minutes for a check-in process. And they said now it has gone up to 10 minutes, sometimes even 20 minutes, because it gets to the point in Japan. One of the things I really admire and respect is that everything is so precise, right? So we have to take great care that even sometimes, I kid you not, like if a T is not crossed, an I is not dotted, or if the month date is in not the correct international standard order, where we've got to take time and call the inbound airport and say, hey, just FYI, this is like this, will you accept it, right? So it takes a great deal of time for the check-in process. And I continue to be amazed at our airport staff, whether it's that or, as Christine mentioned, with the hubs that you talk about, the logistics and the operations of the people, that they can achieve this and get this done, because it's no easy feat. But I think that it still works really quite well. And I think the communication is really very good, and that we have a lot of really dedicated people. So I'm really quite proud of our team at Japan Airlines and with American Airlines as well. They take great care. Sadly, I had a flight that was delayed the other day, but American Airlines quickly reaccommodated me on the next flight. So it was really seamless. I didn't have to get in line, and it was really a good story, because we understand that weather does happen, right? And we want to be safe.
Yeah, I want to pick up on the point that Christine mentioned briefly, and we'll start with the notion from the vaccination side, but it's in times of challenge, businesses tend to find technologies that can generate improvements that will create constant improvements into the future. Now, in the US right now, if you talk about the concept of a vaccine passport, you will hear lots of negative comments and lots of positive comments. I want to put the opprobrium aside and just get to the notion of, from your perspective, what are you seeing with regard to the use of digital technologies now to make the flying experience more seamless, whether it's some sort of vaccine passport or a new check-in process that you've tried to implement during the pandemic because it's touchless and that's what people want. So Christine, maybe you can start with that, and then I'd like to see if Steve's got a different take given the Japan Airlines.
Absolutely. So yes, technology we've become more nimble and more focused in technology, and it's ever changing, but it is what has helped us provide a better customer experience. And like the Verifly, which is not a vaccine passport per se, it's just really helping people know what are the requirements. They can upload those requirements onto the app for the country that they're traveling to in order to speed up the process, right? But of course, with all our health and safety protocols that some of them we've changed, we also now have the mobile boarding pass. We've implemented the touchless kiosk, so you can check in without even having to touch anything. Biometric boarding as well, which we're testing. Biometric bags, which is incredible. The technology that has been developed to be able to identify your bag, even though everybody has the same black Samsonite bag, is just incredible. And all of these things are helping us improve the customer experience at the airport, make us more efficient, which is always welcomed, and just help people, be able to go through their traveling experience without any hassles.
Thanks, Christine. And then as we go to Steve, Japan is always known for its use of technology. And so if there's any sort of wow thing that you want to talk about as part of this, please share it.
Sure. When it comes to technology, it really is fun. And Dean Delaney, we actually have an innovation lab that is not far from Tokyo Haneda Airport, which is really a group of people at Japan Airlines that are just dedicated to see what type of technology is out there and how can we take those applications and use it for our industry or for other industries. So there's been some interesting things coming out of that, whether it's robots. I think we've got robots of 2 or 3 different sizes that are there to assist you at the airport in multiple languages. And we've tried a lot of those things out, and I think it's really exciting. But in terms of the digital passports, I think that IATA, the International Air Transportation Association, has been working on type of a digital passport long before the pandemic came along. So they were quite ready for something that they're testing now called IATA Travel Pass, and Japan Airlines is on the advisory committee with that. And so along with things like Verifly, I think it is something that we will see come more and more in use, but ultimately the usage of it is really not going to be determined by the airlines. It is determined by the governments in terms of what they are willing to accept. So in terms of how comfortable people are with that, that's really going to be up to the governments. But from a technology standpoint, I think that we are quite ready for it. And our industry is really kind of an interesting one, because when I first joined back in 1995, I sat at a terminal and they said, hey, look, you can send an electronic message to somebody at the airport in New York while you're sitting in Los Angeles. It was like, put in their little number and they send a message and they send something back. I was like, wow, this is so cool, right? It seems so funny now, but the airport really had the first type of electronic messaging systems with their reservation systems. But now we've seen the whole, technology just leap over us. And I think that the airline industry has had to replace the platforms that they're on to enable us to do some of the cool, innovative things, right? I always put like Amazon's kind of the benchmark, right? Amazon knows what you want before you want it. They know that you've looked at it. They were willing to offer you another price on it. And I think that that type of innovation is really coming in the future. But for now, as Christine mentioned with the biometrics, I think that's something that we'll really start to see within the coming years. It is quite convenient. And for Japan Airlines, we have this concept of a smart airport it features many of the biometric things that Christine mentioned. And we just released a press release not too long ago about something we're calling Face Express, which if you think about FaceTime, you think about your face to unlock your iPhone and everything. This is a short-term type of usage for your face when you check in at the kiosk, so that your way through the airport is seamless and your face is your passport, more or less, just to go through. And we've seen bits and pieces of that in different airports, but I think with this, we'll see it kind of seamless through the airport onto the boarding. And I think that's really kind of a cool thing that's coming in the future. And I know American Airlines will be right there with us on that.
Steve, I think that's great until the passport diverts me to the chocolate aisle in the store, saying that I might want to pick something up there.
If we know you really well, John, we'll give you a discount on that chocolate, so don't worry.
I wanted to pick up on another issue that I think is a challenge in the airline industry. On the one hand, right now you have lots of people who want to fly at low prices to destinations because they're just desperate to get out of the house. We want to go out to the Caribbean. We'd love to go to Japan or to Hawaii or someplace like that. But airlines for a long time have gotten a lot of revenue from business travelers, the pros who are traveling regularly and pay higher prices for the seats up front. What do you see right now in terms of the coming back of business travel and the things that might be done to facilitate that? Or are we going to be always doing business meetings this way through the virtual approach? Because clearly the airline revenue model will have to shift if business travelers don't come back. Christine, why don't you start with this one?
Sure. So corporate travelers are incredibly important to us, just as, and most of them would be our frequent flyers, right? And I'll tell you that 50 on a normal year, whenever we have those, every once in a while, if 50% of our revenue comes from about 10 to 15% of our customers. These are the road warriors, right? Then you have the people that travel once a year for vacation. Corporate travel, some domestic corporate travel has returned, right? Like you mentioned, the bulk of the business that has been traveling actually to our region in MCLA at American, which is the Floridas, what we call the sun and beaches, and the Caribbean, because like you mentioned, people wanted to get out of the house. And actually Key West was one of the top destinations throughout the pandemic. People just wanted to get out of the house, right? But that running your airline off of that model for us is not sustainable. A lot of our investments and products are geared towards the corporate traveler. And it will come back. It's going to take a little bit longer. We were expecting probably by fourth quarter of this year or first quarter of next year, we'll see it. It continues to increase, by the way. It's already increasing. It's probably about 40% of what it normally is. But we are seeing corporations change their policies. So they're okay traveling domestic. They don't need a senior vice president approval to travel international. Those types of things are happening. And we expect come next year that corporate travel will be back. Now, you asked about face-to-face and virtual. Look, we are a strong believer that particularly in sales, you have to be face-to-face, because if you're not, your competitor will be. And to close a deal virtually versus your competitor doing face-to-face, it's probably not going to be a good decision. And people will, we're social creatures, right? So I think that a lot of the interaction that happens when you're face-to-face, you simply won't get virtually. It could be that some internal staff meetings may happen virtually a little bit more often, but in terms of vendors, suppliers, customers, we really believe that will continue to happen face-to-face. Steve, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I was just listening to you and agreeing with you very much. I think that For international business travel, yeah, I think we're still a little bit a ways. We certainly hope that it will be coming back fourth quarter, or by next year. But I've really learned during this pandemic time that from seeing all these surveys, everybody goes 3 months or 6 months from now, everything will be better, right? So I'm putting myself right in that same category. I'm an eternal optimist. But when it comes to business travel, I think that there may be some changes, but I don't think that it will stop. Some of our travel management companies have even said they may see some more travel because now maybe you won't work in the office. You may decide to go live in Montana and report to your office in San Francisco. So on occasion, you will fly to the office in San Francisco or in Los Angeles and have a team meeting. Now, the frequency of those type of team meetings, those internal ones, those may happen less, but I think that the key drivers, whether it's consultants or salespeople, will continue to be out there. And as one of Christine's colleagues at American Airlines told me, they said, salespeople are going to get out there when they know that there's other salespeople out there. You are not going to lose the business for someone else. So I look at some of the key kind of policy things that I think are driving the allowance to return to travel. And one of those is the return to the office. So we've seen a lot of companies that have said September, just like going back to school, they would go back to the office. We've seen with Delta variant, now some people have shifted that, have moved that back a little bit. But I think that that'll be one of the indicators to see that, hey, if it's okay to come to the office, you can also bring other people to come visit you at the office. And that will start to kind of indicate the return to travel. But in terms of technology, I don't think that it can ever really replace. I think it is a great complement. And the reason I say that is because we can sit here and have these discussions, but when you have those face-to-face meetings, it's the stuff that happens in the hallway. It's the stuff that happens when you're going to grab coffee, or you say, forget about business and you go have some drinks or you have dinner. And then you talk about your family, your friends, your interests. You know, I now know Christine loves basketball. I can ask her about the Miami Heat. You know, we can talk about things like that. And that's more enjoyable. And I think that when you have those type of discussions, you really build trust. Otherwise, when you're just in a window in a box and you're talking like this, it's like, I don't really know that guy or that gal. You know, can I really trust them? But when you have those type of spontaneous engagement, you really get to know a person and their personality. And I think that builds trust. And I think that technology can't quite replace that, but I think it's a great complement.
I think that's well said, Steve, though. I feel sad if you don't trust me.
I do. Well, we've had enough spontaneous conversation, and I am going to come see you and hope to have a drink with you so we can build on it some more.
We will, and I will be in California at some time too. I want to switch gears a little bit because one of the challenges of our day has to do with the environment. And one of the questions that gets raised is, what are airlines doing with regard to their carbon footprint, given that people accept that global warming is a real phenomenon, and consumers are beginning to ask the organizations they interact with what they're doing to make things better. So from your perspective, what do you see the airlines trying to do? And it may not be something that you're doing right now, but I'm sure that both American and Japan are looking into the mid and long-term future at what they can do to deal with carbon footprint and offsets.
Do you want to go first, Dave? You want me to go first? Okay. So for us, sustainability means delivering the benefits of air travel while protecting the planet. And we're actually the first U.S. airline with a clear path to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. We've invested in a lot of new aircraft. We've added almost 600 new aircraft since 2013. And that in itself has improved our fuel efficiency by 10 to 15%. And we actually, in 2020, we committed to purchasing 9 million gallons of sustainable aviation fuel from a company called Neste in the next 3 years. And that fuel gives you it's same efficiency with 75% lower greenhouse gas emissions, which is fantastic. So it's a big commitment for us. We also have a partnership with Cool Effect, so that way our corporate customers can also contribute and calculate their emissions, right, and pay through a Cool Effect. And the most recent one, which I'm super fascinated about, I can't wait to learn more about, is an investment in vertical airspace. And there is building now of aircraft that simply will take off vertically, right? And that is expected to truly also have an impact on the environment. So really looking forward to that. That's going to take a while, obviously, but looking forward to that as well.
Sounds like airlines' capital costs are not going to decrease.
No, but it's all for the better. It's all for the better.
And Steve, I know because you're doing those long routes across the Pacific, people probably talk to Japan Airlines all the time about what they're trying to do to reduce the carbon footprint.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that along with American Airlines, we're doing a lot of the same type of actions. And we both have a goal for net zero carbon emissions by 2050, right? So as Christine mentioned, having a pathway is important, and we've released our type of midterm plan that we have. And if you go to the internet, you can see a lot more detail on our website. But there's a couple areas that we are focused on, and one of the areas obviously is the efficiency of the aircraft. So we've invested a lot in Airbus A350s, and the fuel efficiency there can be 15-20% greater than in the past. And I know that the Boeing 777 had made that similar type of gains. So when we look out at our scheduling for the next 25 plus years, aircraft is one of those areas that we will really hope to see a gain. And then the other areas would be sustainable aviation fuel and also some carbon offsets, right? So Japan Airlines, we have set internally to align many of our goals with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. They have 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And so we have around that topic, we have about 180 different initiatives. So many of those initiatives are on the environment and taking care for the environment. So when we talk about sustainable aviation fuel, I think that's becoming a bigger and bigger commitment. And we have initiatives such as one that came out where I got a press release one day that said Japan Airlines is converting old T-shirts into sustainable aviation fuel. I said, hey, I've got plenty of old T-shirts. I can contribute. Finally, I can do something for the environment. So don't ask me the chemistry behind it, because I went to business school, not chemistry school. But it's really quite innovative to think of how can we take old things like that and make use of them for something to help reduce our carbon emissions. So that's exciting. We're looking at things like the plastic wrapping that goes around the cargo, that goes under the belly of the plane, and how can we recycle those? And so there's all these initiatives that are really focused on it, but the carbon offset, the sustainable aviation fuel, and the reduction of the emissions, also in our operations, how we do our operations and fly the aircraft, all of these things will really lead us to that kind of net zero effect. And I think it's important because I think that people that are flying are really concerned about it. So we want to make sure that we're addressing it as much as possible.
Now, I know we're going to run out of time for this part of the webinar pretty quickly, and I'd like to give you a chance to talk about one additional thing before we move to questions from the audience. And that's, if you were talking to a group of Kogod students right now, what advice would you give them as they're preparing for life after graduation? And What would you say about careers in the airline industry? Christine and then Steve.
Yes, of course. So if I was talking to students, and hopefully we have some students with us today, look, the first thing that I would say is be humble and be coachable, all right? And be a team player. I think those are the three things that are critical. You're going to come into, if you go and work in a corporation, you might expect to bring value by making strategic decisions and things like that. But when you first come in, that may not be where the company needs you to bring value. And I'll give you my example. When I first came in at American, I've moved boxes, I made photocopies, I took the flags to the airport for inaugurals and the ribbon cutting ceremonies. And, whatever they ask you to do it well, be the best that you can be, and learn from others, learn from your supervisors, your managers, your colleagues, because everybody wants people that are willing to help, that are coachable. You're going to get people that are going to come in and they have more experience than you do, and you can absolutely learn from them. So that is what I would tell them to look for. And in terms of the airline industry and sales, there's nothing like sales. I mean, it is fun. It is a big scope because you can be selling all kinds of product, and you're always selling. You're selling with your kids, you're selling with your teachers. When you think about, you're constantly selling something throughout the day. And the airline industry it's very complex. It's very interesting. You can be in sales, and there's so many departments in the airline industry, from what we call above the wing, below the wing, from the bags to the passengers to us in the headquarters, the divisional offices, to selling advertising, to selling, the Wi-Fi. I mean, there's just so many things that I encourage you to look into it. Would love to have another American alumni at American Airlines. So I'm on LinkedIn if anybody's interested, and hope that helps. I hope that you guys have gotten something from this conversation today.
It's exciting, Christine and Steve.
Yeah, so Christine has me inspired, actually. I'm glad that I'm glad I get to go to work every day for an airline. So I think that, for me, when I considered my career, I looked at a couple things. And one was I wanted to kind of assess, what am I good at, right? And then what is my passion? And so, as I mentioned earlier, that the professor at Penn State had identified that I was good in sales or good in communicating with people, right? And I married that together with my passion, which is travel. And so, to Christine's point, I think there's not a day that goes by that I'm bored by this industry, because I love travel. And everybody that I work with and the people that help sell us, they love travel too. So the passion is really there. And, I think that this is probably, airlines are not necessarily the most profitable. So it's maybe not the most lucrative industry, but I think that this sounds very cliche, but I'm very rich in experiences, even if I'm not really rich in my bank account, right? The number of places and countries that I visited is just incredible. And the people that I meet are incredible. And I've tried to step out of this industry once or twice. And anybody who works in the airline industry knows this. We always say it pulls you back in, even if you try to leave. And one of the reasons it pulls you back in is because the people really are great, and they are all passionate about what they do. So if travel is something that you're passionate about and you have a certain skill set, I think you should definitely consider the airline industry. And as Christine said, yes, you need to come with some humility and be willing to do whatever you need to do to learn about this industry, because there's a lot of nuances that they won't teach you in school and that are quite unique to this industry. But it's really fun and enjoyable, and I'm really happy to be in this industry.
surprised if you get a lot of students
So,
reaching
also,
out
please connect with me.
because they're interested.
That's fantastic.
And alumni. Reaching
There
out.
you go.
And alumni directors as well. Anyways, so we do have quite a few questions, and I'm going to try to get through as many as we can here in the last 9 minutes we have. Professor Moriarty asked the question, how do you see flight deck automation being accepted as a way of reducing cost, especially post-pandemic? While I understand a single pilot configuration is more acceptable in the cargo world, what do you think about this in the passenger travel space?
Oof, Steve, I'm going to pass
Yeah,
that one
yeah,
out to you because I do not know the answer to that.
I feel like I'm back in school and I'm being asked a question and I don't know the answer.
I did not study
because-
for the
Yeah, I
test.
didn't study. I apologize. I saw that question come in and I quickly looked up to make sure I understood what it is. And I guess it's not dissimilar to what you're seeing in the trucking industry, where you're seeing an automation of drivers and what he's saying is a single pilot for cargo. And would that happen with passengers? I really am not well versed enough to give an educated answer, other than to say, just reading from the history of things, I think that it's really quite vital to have more than one person, because when I've read about airline incidences, there's you have to have somebody else that has a different perspective and that is often willing to override the pilot and or advise a pilot, right? Because pilots have to make very quick decisions and their training has to be on all the time. And it's not simple, right? And so I think having another voice in the cockpit is certainly something that I would want on board. But as I said, I'm not an expert. That's just kind of my off the cuff opinion.
I'd add one thing to that, as well as coming off the tragedy of the 737 MAX crashes. My guess is that the traveling public would be concerned if you didn't have a complement of pilots on a plane. I'll turn it back to Jim.
So, with business travel being down, do you see an increase in change fees and baggage fees? And is the airline's going to continue to do this to their leisure travelers?
I like how you posed that, do this to your leisure traveler. Look, no, we don't set, at least on the American Airlines side, we do not set our bag fee policies off of the trends of corporate versus leisure travelers. And all travelers are welcome. What we like to do is be able to offer products that, that different travelers like or need, right? So some corporate travelers don't need bags and others do. In my part of the world, bags are prevalent. People come up to the United States to shop, right? And as an airline, we have to balance the weight of the aircraft and the space of the belly to transport passengers. Our main objective is to transport passengers, and you absolutely want to make sure that the passenger is traveling with their bag. And so that balance of charging fees has to do more with that than with the trend of the type of traveler. Steve? I don't think people come shopping from Japan over to LA, right?
No, they don't. But there are a lot of people going back to Japan, primarily families right now, because it's mostly Japanese citizens that are allowed, plus U.S. military on assignment. So, I mean, we've even done something such as giving an extra bag right now during this time period to motivate people, because there aren't a lot of passengers flying internationally, right? And then I think domestically, a lot of fees have actually been, change fees and things like that have been waived by many of the carriers like American Airlines and others. And for Japan Airlines too, we've had a flexible booking policy, right? So I think it's actually has bent to the favor of leisure travelers right now to encourage travel. At some point that may change in the future, but I think that's not in the foreseeable future.
So the next question is, based on your knowledge of the industry, what do you think the chances are of a single app or a single passport type process happening for air travel universally? Do you think that's even a rational thing that we can look forward to?
That would be wonderful. And as a matter of fact, IATA has been working on having an app that all the airlines could potentially use. It's just, if I'm not mistaken, Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, it hasn't been deployed. In the meantime, and again, in our situation, still flying internationally out of Miami to Latin America, we needed to develop something because we needed to ensure that people can make their connections and get on board the flights, right? So that's why we went with this incredible company, Dayon, who has just been fantastic and helped us develop Verifly that's been used by several airlines. But it would be wonderful if we can get to a place where we have just one app, because people don't want to be downloading, different apps, right? It would also be wonderful if all the countries would adapt it as well. And I think that one of the biggest challenges that we've had in our region is with 43 countries, getting the countries to align and use the same technology or the same apps for this. That has been a challenge.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Christine. And the IATA travel passes, as we mentioned earlier, is I think you're absolutely right. It's something that's designed for airlines to be able to integrate into their own app so that those health credentials, if they're necessary, are built into the app. And I think that really this is, post 9/11, you saw TSA come in, post pandemic, I think these type of health credentials will become more and more standard. And I think that the technology is there and it's ready to be implemented. But as Christine mentioned, it's really up to the governments to do it. So once it's there, I think it can be seamless so that you get your COVID test and it integrates with your app and you go to the airport and it's all right there, your boarding pass, your health credentials, everything. And even the passport to some point, right? So you can have it all type of seamless. I think that will be there in the future. It's just a matter of where and when governments agree to it.
So I have one last question. Actually, it's two questions put into one that you can just have 30 seconds to answer because we're running out of time here. But one of the students on the call wants to know if what's the advice you would have for landing an internship with American or one of the other legacy air carriers in the United States, what tips you would have, and also how important is it to be trilingual in this space?
Do you want me to go first? How to tip? Apply. That's the tip that I can give you. Go ahead and apply. We usually internships would post, so it would be available. In terms of trilingual, I speak Portuguese. I deal with Brazil a lot, so it is important in my neck of the woods. It may not be as necessary in other parts of the our domestic network, right? Because they're not dealing with international customers, but it is for me. In my region, it's important. Steve?
Yeah, I think you're right. You apply. Generally, Japan Airlines, we have very limited internships here just in the United States just because the size is so small. But I think language in our industry is forever important. I wish that I spoke Japanese. I do not, but if you do and you have an interest in the aviation business, certainly it's worth considering, and just let me know.
All right, John, any last words of wisdom?
I just want to thank Steve and Christine for the time today and the insightful answers they provided. We could go on for another hour, I'm sure, talking through a lot of different issues, but you're dealing with an industry that is front and center today, and the success of the airline industry is going to, in a way, demonstrate that we're getting in front of the pandemic. So I want to say thanks to you. You're both welcome in Washington anytime. And I do look forward to seeing Steve sometime in Los Angeles, and we'll be down in Miami in sometime too, Christine.
Sounds great.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure. I'm sure for Steve as well. It's been a pleasure. And I hope to see you on board one of our flights soon.
Thank you too. We'll be back with another one of these in September. We're working on that topic right now. It's going to be about how alumni have changed their careers during the course of this pandemic. So more information will be coming out soon on that. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend, and take care.
Great. Thank you.